All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready for our next set of Module 4 notes. Today we're going to be looking at Lesson 4-26, dividing a unit fraction by a whole number. Now, if that sounds similar to the last lesson, 425, it is, except we're going the other way. Last time we were dividing a whole number, so we took 2, 7, whatever, and we were seeing how many fractions would fit inside, how many fractions we could make out of them. This time we're going the opposite way. We're going to start with a fraction, and we're going to cut it into pieces. Let's talk about what that looks like in just a moment. First, 10, 20, 25, 26 is our Roman numeral. 26, X, X, V, I. They are starting to get kind of long here. All right, our vocabulary from yesterday, or rather from today, will be the same as the last lesson. Vocabulary. We'll start by asking, what is a fraction? And I keep repeating this and asking you to write it down because I really need to make sure that this is super, super clear in your mind. Fractions are equal parts of a whole. If I split something into thirds, then all of those pieces, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, they are equal to each other. Each one is identical. They're triplets. If I break something into sevenths, every one of those pieces, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7, they're all the same. Now, we're also talking still about unit fractions. Unit fractions are any of the fractions I just mentioned, really. Any fraction with a numerator, any fraction with a numerator of 1. So I'm going to draw one of my fancy ones again just to make sure we drive that point home. A unit fraction is any fraction with a numerator of 1. It is a fraction with a numerator atop of 1. Okay. As stated previously, you have seen this vocabulary before, so hopefully it's super, super stuck in your brain. Let's take a look at some expressions and see how this all comes together. Now, we are going to be drawing some boxes today, and I'm going to be kind of picky about how you draw them, so listen and watch carefully, please. For this first box, we're going to make it 3 lines long, stretched across. I'm going to try as much as I can to make it pretty close to a square. It's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. Now, this is going to be 1/2. 1/2. So I'm going to cut it in half. And my lines are a little darker than normal. You'll see why in a moment. Okay. Go ahead, shade that in. Regular pencil will do fine for today. We don't need special colors this time. Just go ahead and lightly shade that in. Now, I'm going to take this 1/2. And I am going to divide the half into pieces. I am going to divide 1/2. I'm writing it down below because I'm going to draw the box again. 1/2 divided by 1/3. So draw the box. Cut it in half. Shade it in lightly. I know this is feeling repetitive, but I want you to see the difference between the two boxes. Right now there is no difference. But if I'm going to divide, whoops, and I said divide by 1/3, I'm sorry, let's fix that. We're dividing by A whole number, Mr. Landre. Stay focused. We're going to divide it by 3. 1/2 divided by 3, we're going to look at just this part and we're going to cut it into 3 equal pieces. So there's a piece, and there's a piece. 1, 2, 3 pieces total. I took my 1/2 and divided it into 3. Now I can think of this as being the same as saying I'm finding 1/3. See how I broke this into thirds? 1/3 of 1/2. And I know that you all know 1/3 of 1/2 is the same as 1/3 times 1/2. 1/3 times 1/2 is going to equal, let's keep it on the right line, is going to equal 1/6. So what's happening here, I am taking my fraction, I am dividing it by a whole number, I'm dividing it into 3 pieces. But I can think of that as being the same as multiplying 1/3. And take a look, if I extend these lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are 6 pieces now. One of the pieces would be 1/6. Let's take a look at another one. Okay. If that's not making a ton of sense so far, again, we're going to do at least 2 more examples together in our notes. We'll do more in class. So here's another box. I'm going to start by cutting it in half, but this time we're going to split it into 4ths. So now I'm only shading in 1/4 of my region, 1/4 of my shape. Okay. 1/4. I know those fractions are getting small, but I'm going to kind of conserve some paper space here. Just like I did before, I am going to copy over my region. I'm going to copy over my 4th because I'm going to divide it a bit. It's a little too big, but that's okay. Sketches don't have to be perfect. We'll just remember that they're supposed to be. We'll remember that the pieces are equal. Even though that one's obviously smaller. God, it's going to bother me. Oh well. All right, so here's my 1/4. Now what if I try to divide that into 5 pieces? 5 pieces. Well, there's 2, 3, 4, 5. It's getting some little slivers there. Okay. Now when I do this, it's a little hard to immediately tell what fraction that is. So once again, I'm going to think to myself, okay, each of these slivers is 1/5 of 1/4, which means 1/5 times 1/4. Well, 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 4 is 20. 1/20. Now, if that's not making a ton of sense, try in your mind to imagine we started with this entire region, right? We had the whole thing, then we broke it into 4ths. Then we zoomed into just that 1/4. So that's all we can see, all we can think about. And then that was cut into 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. These are 5ths, 1/5 of my original 1/4. Try not to zoom in like that too much on the videos. I imagine it's probably weird, but I want you to think of just that section. That's why we're finding 1/5 of 1/4. Okay. Now, some of you are probably noticing a little bit of a pattern here. If not, Let's see if the last one makes it more clear. Oh, let me do one more thing. In case you're not 100% believing me on the 1/20th, if I extend these lines and I draw similar lines, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me make sure I left myself enough room before I went all the way down. If you go ahead and count all of these little boxes, and you may pause the video and go ahead and count them if you like, there are 20 of them. 1/20th. All right, for our last one, we're going to try something of a slightly different shape. Still a rectangle, but we're going to make it a little shorter, a little longer, just to prove that this is going to work no matter what our boxes look like. May as well draw the arrow because you know what's coming. Our first box, we're going to split into 2, 3, 4, 5 equal parts. So this time, I am dealing with 1/5 to start. You can almost picture that as what I was doing up here. Let me slide this up a little bit. 1/5. Now I'm going to take this 1/5 and I am going to divide it by a whole number. So first things first, 2, 3, 4, 5, all equal 1/5 right there, and divide that by 2. Divide that by 2. Okay. 1/5 divided by 2. Let's cut right here. Now, if I extend the line out, cut everything, all the fifths, into 2 pieces, we can see, and I'm sorry folks, it's driving me nuts. I have to fix it. There we go. Then you can see how it stretches out and makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boxes. So 1/5, or more accurately, let's write it the way we've been doing it. I cut the 1/5 into halves. 1/2 of 1/5, which would equal 1/10. Let's zoom out a little bit there. 1/10. Okay. 1/2 of 1/5 would be 1/10. 1/2 divided into 2 pieces would be 1/10. 2 times 3 is 6. 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 2 is 10. These examples are showing us that we can just multiply. Now this only works if we're dividing, so please be careful. If we're dividing a unit fraction divided by a whole number, go ahead and just multiply across the bottom. Now you can draw the pictures as well to help you see this, but you're just taking the fraction 1/5, dividing it by 2. That means you are going to be cutting this into 2 pieces. So from 5 pieces originally, now you're going to have 10. 4 was cut into 5 pieces. So where we had 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, now we have 5 times as many because every single one of those gets cut into 5 pieces. 4 times 5. We'll do a few quick examples, then I'll wrap up for this lesson. I know these ones have been running a little bit longer, but I want to make sure that this new material is making sense. Okay? And actually, before we do that, let's write what we just discussed. Multiply the denominator times the whole number. This is if you are dividing a unit fraction divided by a whole number. If the whole number's first, it works differently. We saw that yesterday. But if you are dividing a unit fraction by a whole number, multiply the denominator times that whole number. Now let's do our examples. Keep that in mind. Multiply the denominator times the whole number. Okay. Remember, division order is very important. It's like subtraction. So if I give you 1/6 divided by 7, all you're going to do is multiply denominator times the whole number. 42. Because it's a unit fraction, put a 1 on top, and you're done. That's it. That's all. If I give you 1/3 divided by 4, multiply across the bottom, denominator times the whole number. 3 times 4 is 12. Put a 1 on top, and you are done. 1/12 divided by 6. Well, 12 times 6. 12 times 6. 6 times 2 is 2. Well, 12 technically. 6 times 1 is 6. Carry that 1, you get 7. So 72. 60 plus 12. 12 times 6 is 72. Put a 1 on top, and you are done. We'll practice more of these in class. I think it's easy enough to do, but remembering when to do it. Remembering that this only works if you have a unit fraction divided by a whole number. Now, if you have a fraction that is not a unit fraction, if I had 5/12 or 7/3, that's improper, but whatever. There is a way to do that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. For right now, this is what we're going to practice. If you have any questions, put them on a sticky note, and we'll go over them when I see you in class. Thank you, folks. Keep this in a safe spot, and I'll see you next time.